Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. And sorry for the disappointment. For most of you, I think you were looking forward to see and hear from Muglila Prabhuji, and here I am. So I hope it works well, at least meditating on the Lord with the help of each other. And we'll begin by offering prayers. Om Adhyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I'm going to speak on the same topic that Moglila Prabhuji had decided, and that topic is development of the topic is Narad Muni's discussion about the let me see.
Narada's vision of the Lord.
Right. Narad Muni's vision of the Supreme Lord. And this verse that I'm focusing on is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, verse 16. And
you want someone to share, Mataji?
Yeah, I can do that. No, I'll do. And then okay. do we repeat in this session? Like, do we repeat or recite the verse, all of us, one by one, or how do you do that?
Generally, only the speaker chants, we repeat on the mute.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
how we are doing.
So. Yeah, that's fine. So here, so this is the verse. Dhyayatascharnam bhojam bhavanirjita chetasa outkantyashru kalakshasya rudyasinme shanair harihi. Dhyayatascharnam bhojam bhavanirjita chetasa outkantyashru kalakshasya rudyasinme shanair harihi. Dhyayatascharnam bhojam bhavanirjita chetasa outkantyashru kalakshasya rudyasinme shanair harihi. And I will read the word by word translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dhyayataha, thus meditating upon, Charana Ambojam, the lotus feet of the localized personality of Godhead. Bhava Nirjita, mind transformed in transcendental love for the Lord. Chetasa, all mental activities, thinking, feeling, and willing. Utkantya, eagerness. Ashrukala, tears roll down. Akshasya, of the eyes. Rudi, within the heart. Asita, appeared. Me, my. Shanaihi, without delay. Harihi, the personality of Godhead. And here is the translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The word bhava is significant here. This bhava stage is attained after one has transcendental affection for the Lord. The first initial stage is called Shraddha, or a liking for the Supreme Lord. And in order to increase that liking, one has to associate with pure devotees of the Lord. The third stage is to practice the prescribed rules and regulations of devotional service. This will dissipate all sorts of misgivings and remove all personal deficiencies that hamper progress in devotional service. When all misgivings and personal deficiencies are removed, there is a standard faith in transcendental matter, and the taste for it increases in greater proportion. The stage leads to attraction, and after this, there is bhava, or the prior stage for unalloyed love for God. All the above different stages are but different stages of development of transcendental love. Being so surcharged with transcendental love, there comes a strong feeling of separation, which leads to 8 different kinds of ecstasies. Tears from the eyes of a devotee is an automatic reaction. And because Sri Narad Muni, in his previous birth, attained that stage very quickly after his departure from home, it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence of the Lord, which he tangibly experienced by his developed spiritual senses without material image. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamiham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagna Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijan Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Prabhuji, please, I don't remember the next word.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhagavati
Bhaktir
Uttama
Bhavati
Shloke
Naishtaki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Sorry, I was a little nervous about the verse. So I will read.
Don't be nervous, Mataji. We are all your students.
Yeah, no,
Please.
I'm student of all you, so please tolerate me. So here's the verse that Narad Muni speaks. Dhyatas charanam bhojam bhavan nirjita chetasam utkanthashru kalakshasya hridyasin me shanair hari. So as soon as Narad, there's a description of dialogue between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. So Narad Muni is the spiritual master, Vyasadeva is the student. And there's a very direct question by the student Vyasadeva. And this question is, what did you do after your initiation? So in other words, the question was, what did you do to move from your sadhana deha, which is the material body for your practice that you're doing your practice with, to your siddha deha, or your perfected spiritual body? What happened in between? What was the process? How did you go to that stage? And that was the question of Vyasadeva. And the answer that Srila Narad Muni gave is a standard process in our Gaudiya Vaishnava, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Narad Muni is our topmost leader after Brahmadev in our Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And this is the process that we have in our Sampradaya. There we have a very systematic and scientific process of development of transcendental love for Lord. And Narad Muni is actually presenting that scientific and systematic process to his student, Vyasadeva. And the process of that transcendental, that development of transcendental love, in other words, is to develop ecstatic emotions for the Lord in this present condition of ours. in the present condition of Narad Muni. That was he was explaining. So in this way, this systematic and scientific process is called so because there's a standardization to a great extent. It's not something whimsical that we do for developing the love for the Lord, or we do not whimsically present that to the outer world, but it's a very systematic, standardized, uniform, universal process. And secondly, I thought it's a very realizable process. Like somebody can know how to realize it, how to feel it. And there Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, tangibly experience. So that's what Narad Muni did. He tangibly experienced that love of God, or the darshan of the Lord, and that particular verse. And not only that, but it's also called scientific or systematic because even the pitfalls are also explained. Like what happens if you don't go through that process, and if you jump upon certain stage, and then what happens? So how it is not advisable. So because of all of this explanation, we can say that the process that Narad Muni is explaining to Vyasadeva, and also the process which is foundation for our sampradaya at the given moment, is so much scientific and systematic. So I just want to reflect on that. And so if we see in particular, this is the, Srila Prabhupada in the purport calls this as the bhava stage. And he mentions that it's a prior stage before the unalloyed love of God in this development of transcendental love. And Narad Muni, after his departure from his home, and we saw probably last time how his mother left suddenly, and he took it as this mercy within the calamity. So that was a calamity for the 5-year-old Narad Muni, and he transformed it into mercy. And that's how he left the house. And after his departure, we had the description in the couple of previous verses. He went through every possible place on earth to travel and to search for the Lord. And it's always very, very overwhelming for me to read that description, because sometimes even within our own house, a secure house, if there is a darkness and we can't figure out how to walk in the given space, we are so much overwhelmed, we're so much fearful, anxious. Same thing if you have a small ridge outside our house of the trees, we don't want to go there after 10 o'clock in the night. And here Narad Muni is just a matter to reflect upon what he must have gone through, or how much his spiritual strength was because of the association with the Bhakti Vedantas, that he was not even scared a little bit for traveling throughout the earth at different places, which were very much overwhelming. So in that way, Srila Prabhupada mentions that he very quickly attained, and I'm just going to pull the purport. Yeah, he said that he, after the departure from home, Narad Muni very quickly attained, or quickly went through all the stages of developing the love for the Lord. And those stages are described by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. And they're very, very important stages for a sadhaka to memorize, and to almost every day call upon those stages and to see where we are. So the first stage that happens is Shraddha. Srila Prabhupada mentions that, and I'm going to pull a thing from here to describe to you those stages. So the first is Shraddha, and we all know, before that, I'm going to connect these stages to the Shikshashtakam, because these stages which are described by Srila Prabhupada, which are a part of Sri Narad Muni's teaching, where the first one is Shraddha, which is faith. Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivrutti, Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivrutti. That's the second stage. The third stage is Nishtha. The fourth stage is Ruchi. Then is Asakti, and then the Bhav. And then the Vipralambha Prem and Sambhogya Prem. So these are the stages which are described, and each of them have a description. And for today's discussion, I'm going to link them all to the 8 verses of Shikshashtakam. And this particular work of connecting the stages of developing the love of God, um, as described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shikshashtakam 8 verses, that matching is done by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But the interesting part is that his work is based upon the previous Acharya's work. And in that way, in our Sampradaya, it is not just the theory that's given, but the theory is utilized by the previous Acharyas. They have worked on that theory, they have realized that theory, and then they have given us the lessons how to follow that theory and realize. So that's how these stages, their explanation in correlation with Shikshashtakam, and this whole process of matching and following in our own lives, which is given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is something that we can really take every day, and especially use today's verse to meditate upon that. So I will put this page now. So I will read these stages, which I just spoke about, in a little bit more detail. And all of us, we can recall the verses of Shikshashtakam in order to meditate on the description of each of these stages. So first one is Shraddha, or faith. And the faith is the first step in chanting, as we know in the Shikshashtakam verse, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. And the next one is Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Anartha Nivrutti. So association of devotees in order to start our Bhajana Kriya is an important step. And in that, when somebody starts in that way, the first thing that happens is the Anartha Nivrutti. And Srila Prabhupada mentions here the misgivings and the personal deficiencies. In the purport, he mentions these 2 words. The personal deficiencies and the misgivings are removed. And then one can move on to the stage of Nishtha. And Nishtha is more fixed devotion, more fixed faith. And I think this is not the right book. Okay, so I'm just gonna say. So the next one is Nishtha, and then comes the Ruchi, which is, Srila Prabhupada mentions that the taste for more of the love of God, or for chanting the names of the Lord, increases. So that taste or Ruchi comes. And we all know the one that verse says, Na dhanam na janam na sundarim, where Mahaprabhu is saying, I do not want anything, but I want bhakti, life after life. So that is the taste, that is the Ruchi that develops. And then comes the Asakti. At the Asakti stage, what happens is that we are very much fixed in our goal of returning back to Godhead in His love. Because it's not just the initial steps of being Nishthavan and bringing, and under Nishtha, there are like 4 things, like not hankering for your own honor, ready to give honor to others, and tolerant, and tolerance, and very humble, being humble. And then we also asking for Ruchi, which is the taste for life after life. But in the Asakti, there is a little bit difference, that we begin to aspire to go back to Krishna as soon as possible. And that is Asakti. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that as soon as we have this Asakti or attachment, the first thing is that we become ecstatically emotional about the Lord. Because we all have experienced our emotions in this world. We have emotions of love, affection for our loved ones. But this is a very different kind of emotion that we develop in the service, in the love of God. And this Bhava stage, Srila Prabhupada mentions, is the stage prior to the final or unalloyed love of God. And so let me see what other things I wanted to say before I move on to the other aspect is that so so as I mentioned before, this is the bhajana kriya, and I call it as a journey of the soul in the bhajana kriya. And this journey of bhajan kriya is actually very well described, as I mentioned before, by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, connecting it with the Shikshashtakam verses. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in the first place, wrote Harinam Chintamani, where he described the glories of the Harinam, glories of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And as a sequence or as a sequel, he wrote another book called Sri Bhajana Rahasya. And I'm going to show it. Sri Bhajana Rahasya. And in this Bhajana Rahasya, he speaks about this exact process of developing the different stages of love of God. And that's how I thought this is very relevant in today's discussion. So I brought it here. So I'm going to read a couple of things from here so we get to know more about his idea of Bhajana Kriya and moving on that process of Bhajana Kriya to at least realize what Narad Muni is speaking about here, of sitting down and having tears rolling out of your eyes and seeing the personality of God in your heart. That may be too much for us, but this is a process, and we at least try to realize that, understand that process, and see where we are at the end of the discussion. So that's how Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote this book, Bhajana Rahasya. And in that, he calls this process as Rahasya, right? Rahasya means secret, secrecy. And we all know, like, before we even do anything, we have to follow Vaidhi Bhakti in our parampara, which is a standard method of devotional service. And then the acharyas point us towards the Raga Nuga Bhakti, which is spontaneous love of God. This is not necessarily stand in a standard form, but it's spontaneous. And the Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions in this Bhajan Rahasya that the concept of pure devotional service regarding Raganuga Bhakti has been described by our previous acharyas like Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Samrita Sindhu. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained in the Bhajan Rahasya some details regarding the chanting. He has also given an outline of the practice of Raganuga Bhakti according to the instructions given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shikshashtakam. So this is the connection. And in this way, this book, like a torchlight to help one progress on the devotional path in the line of Rupa Goswami and his followers. So this is, we will delve a little bit into this Rahasya, Bhajan Rahasya, and see where we connect today's verse. And so this secret or Rahasya of Prema Bhakti is getting revealed to us with the help of this book also. And if I read a particular paragraph from here, so what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has done, as he has divided into 8 parts, and he has taken each Shikshashtakam verse and then connecting it with the stage of devotional love. He has given an explanation. For example, for Shraddha, which is the first stage, as per the purport of Srila Prabhupada in this verse, Shraddha has been taken as the first step by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he expands on that, and he explains, and then he goes to the next stage, which is Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivrutti, and then he again explains, and then like that he goes for each stage. So today we will see the 6th stage, because Narad Muni is explaining his bhav, which is the 6th stage in this ladder, and we will see what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to say about this bhava stage and how we connect this whole chain of Narad Muni's realization, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation based on our previous acharyas, and then our stage or our situation or our endeavor for sadhana bhakti. So the sixth sadhana, which is bhav, describes the external symptoms of perfection as given in the sixth verse of Shikshashtakam, which is Nayanam galada ashudharya, Vadanam gadgadaruddhayagira, Pulakaira nichitam vapugada, tava nama grahane bhavishyati. So if you see, Narad Muni's experience is very much expressed in the sixth verse of Shikshashtakam. And according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's introduction, it says that it's an external symptom of perfection, as given in the sixth verse of Shikshashtakam, and the symptoms of bhava are described. And it also describes how a sadhaka practicing Raganuga Bhakti serves Krishna externally in sadhaka form and internally in its spiritual form. In this way, after attaining bhava, he can relish the sweetness of Krishna by following in the mood of the gopis. So I really like this part because it gives us this parallel process of external seva or service that we try to do with our body, mind, words, intelligence, and then the internal seva, which is our consciousness and which is our connection between me and Krishna. And that too have to go parallelly according to this description of everybody, the description of Narad Muni, the description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and explanation of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And what I want to reflect more upon is the actual description when he goes to describing in the sixth chapter. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur brings in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explanation, where he says that the first stage of prema is known as bhava. So as you can see, we have traveled Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and then we have Nishtha, we have Ruchi, we have Asakti. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, using this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verse, says that now we are going to develop prema. Now it's about to start. And Srila Prabhupada also says that this is the prior stage of prema. So in this bhava stage, he says that this is the first step of prema, or even before prema, where the 8 sattvika vikaras, or the 8 bodily transformations take place. And Srila Prabhupada has given a reference to that in his purport about these 8 vikaras, or the 8 bodily transformations that happen. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to speak a little bit more about those vikaras, and the whole idea is that it should help us in some way. And I will read some of these symptoms. So there is standing of the hairs on end and crying. Also, there is tolerance, more tolerance. Then there is concern that time should not be wasted. And Narad Muni has a very specific verse in his Bhakti Sutras. They call the Narada Bhakti Sutra. That time should not be, even a kshan means a moment, should not be wasted without considering the devotional service of the Lord. And then comes the detachment, absence of false prestige, hope, eagerness, a taste for chanting of the holy name of the Lord, attachment for glorifying the qualities of the Lord, and affection for those places where the Lord resides, like the temple or Vrindavan Dham or other Dham. So these are called bhava or anubhava stages. And when I read this, I thought these are like our personal yardsticks. Sometimes we can use them as personal yardsticks for this so-called secret journey, or the rahasya, the bhajan rahasya of every one of us. So it's a very personal bhajan rahasya for each one of us, because as I read before, that there are 2 parallel paths of external and internal, and your internal path has nothing to do with your external, or at least your internal path should not be affected by whatever happens on the external side. So we have all our household duties, we are family people, we have temple duties, and we do them externally with our body, mind, senses. But internal journey is something that happens in our bhajana kriya, which is mainly through our chanting, and then the daily, throughout the day, the meditation. Um, so, and you can see the words that Bhaktivinoda Thakur used, the sadhaka deha and the siddha deha. So our sadhaka deva is doing everything, but within our, when we sit down to chant or when we meditate, that's where we are using our progress in this development of love of God. We are using that progress to see how we can connect more and more with the Lord. And that's why all these symptoms can be very important as a personal yardsticks in our secret journey, we can say, in our secret journey of our soul's love for God, our soul's love for connecting back with Krishna. And uh, I'll read one more thing, which is really important, that in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, again, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur brings this verse, where he's saying that the advanced devotee who's inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna in Vrindavan. He should execute service externally as a regulative devotee, as well as internally from his self-realized position. Thus, he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. And giving the example of how do you do internally is that they say that how you a woman attached to a man other than her husband will appear very busy outside, but within her heart, she's always relishing feelings of association with her paramour. So this is the analogy that our Acharya has given. And using that, we can see where we stand in our personal yardsticks. Do we have a feeling that not a single moment should be wasted? Do we have a feeling of detachment, absence of prestige, or attachment to glorifying the Lord, or affection to mentally live in a dham? And I see that in this, Sri Narad Muni has exactly followed this process, because after having this darshan, as per this verse, which he's sharing his experience with his student Vyasadeva, he actually goes back to the regular material world, and then he does his sadhana bhakti with his body, and then he quits his body to get the spiritual deha or spiritual body of Siddha Deha. So in one sense, he has also done that. And that's how it should be very inspiring for us to follow in his footsteps, because that's what the suggestion here we just now read, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which he brings from Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, that we have to get attached to one of the associates of the Lord who somehow or the other personally connect with us, and we find a very special attraction for that associate of the Lord. And in other words, sometimes I call it like, here's our Narad Muni as one of the main acharyas in our sampradaya, and we should aspire to get admitted into his school, in his bhakti school. Yeah, that might be overwhelming, or that might sound a little bit empty, because it's so much might sound theoretical, but it's not necessarily like that if we are on the right path of our bhajana kriya, rahasya. Is doable. And especially I feel very attracted to Narad Muni in that sense, because he is very much like connectable. He was a person, a very ordinary person in the beginning, and then he came in association with the pure devotees, and he had a very specific progress in terms of this particular today's verse of seeing the darshan of the Lord in his heart. And then he moved on again to do more of his sadhana, and then he attends. So in that, in his process is very much relatable for people like us, and that's how I feel we should consider something like that in our meditation. One more thing before, I think, what time is it? Yeah, it's just 8:34. So one more thing I wanted to bring or present to you is that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what he did is for each Shikshashtakam verse, he wrote a poem. Shikshashtakam is already a poem, and he wrote another Bengali poem to connect with that mood. So I thought, because today we are discussing the sixth step of bhava, which is described by Narad Muni for us in this verse today. I thought bringing that song to you, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written in Bengali, because it's even more simplification of that process or simplification of that theory which Narad Muni is giving on a very high level. Yes, we took help of Shikshashtakam to slightly understand it a little bit more. But here's one more further simplification by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in this Bengali poem. And I would like to present that to you for to open the right page. Yeah. Yeah. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur has this poem. I don't know the title of that, but it says like this. अपराध फले मम चित्त भेलो वज्र समाम तुया नामे ना लभे विकार हताश होइए बहरी तब नाम उच्च कोरी बोरो दुखे डाकी बार बार. So he's saying that, O Lord Hari, as a result of my offenses incurred in previous lifetimes, my heart has become hard like a thunderbolt and feels no change upon chanting your holy name. Now, in utter hopelessness, O Lord Hari, I loudly sing your name, and in great distress, I call out to you again and again. Dina doya moya karuna nidana bhava bindu dei rakho parana. O Lord, who is compassionate towards all the fallen souls, O origin of all mercy, please give me a drop of divine ecstasy and thereby save my life. So I wanted to point out to these words which he's using. In the first stanza, he's saying vikara, which means he's saying, I do not have any transformations of body as happened with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as happened with Narad Muni while taking darshan of the Lord. There's no vikara in my body. And then he's using in the next verse the word bhava bindu. So he's pointing out to this bhava which he's not having. And he's saying that, please give me that drop of bhav so that I can save my life with this. And then he moves on to say, Kabe tuya nama ucharane mora, nayane jharabo dara dara lora. When will an incessant stream of tears flow dripping and dripping from my eyes at the articulation of your holy name? So again, he's referring to this crying or tears, which is also experienced by Narad Muni. Then he says, Gada gada swara kanthe upajabo mukhe bola adha adha bahirabo. When will a faltering voice choked with emotion arise in my throat? And when will words gurgled due to ecstasy come from my mouth? Ulake bharabo sharira hamara sweda kampa stambha habe bara bara. When will my body be filled with ecstatic rapture? And when will there be perspiration, trembling, and a stunned sensation again and again? Vivarna sharire haraubu jnana nama samashraye dharobu paranam. When, out of divine ecstasy, will all consciousness be lost in my pale and discolored body? And when will I hold on to my very life under the shelter of your holy name? Milabo hamara kiye aichedina rove bhakati vinoda matihinam. This weeping Bhaktivinoda, who is devoid of all good intelligence, sobs, O Lord, how will such a day ever be mine? I thought this is a great description of how we can use all of these yardsticks to understand our situation. Do we have any of these? I'm going to go back and where we have this experience of bhava. But before that experience, we have all of these ashtavikaras, or the 8 bodily transformations, starting with reaction as a natural reaction. Srila Prabhupada mentions it's a natural reaction of tears. Unless we connect with the Lord emotionally, how can that natural reaction of tears come? And once that comes, how do we feel utterly empty? And we saw not wasting a moment of time, because we feel there is so much I need to do before my time is up. And I have so much less time left that I do not want to waste it. And that's how we can internally get more and more detached, because we have external everything. We have external body, we have external family, worldly duties and everything. But internally, we are lamenting, and where is that a development of bhava that's going to come in my body? Um, all of these, sweda, perspiration, throat choking, especially faltering voice, choked with emotion. And we have experienced that it happens in our material world. When we have emotions, our throat gets choked. So where is that coming for the Lord, where my words cannot even properly come out of my mouth? And in this way, I tremble, and I lose my consciousness from my body. And in that way, I am really at the stage of bhava, to move on to my next stage of real prema. So um, I think the song is giving us even more um, simplified stages to meditate upon, because this is all based upon our mm, meditation of where we are and how we can feel the love of Lord more and more. So I hope and pray that this small discussion of today has helped us somehow to, first of all, understand Narad Muni's experience, and somehow connect it with our dear Shikshashtakam, which we recite every day, uh, where we can remember more about Narad Muni's experience. And with the help of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanations, we can connect somehow. So all of that, I'm hoping and praying that is helping all of us in studying today, and on our journey. So please accept my humble obeisances to all of you for being here and listening, and allowing me to speak with my small mouth, even though you had expected someone else more experienced and more experienced in devotion than me, and you still allowed me to say a few words. So thank you very much. And I wanted to say Srila Prabhupada ki jai, or Vaishnav Vrinda Acharyas ki jai.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for wonderful explaining. Anyone has any questions, please?
And also, please reflect. I mean, it's not just the questions, but please share your heart, share your experiences, and that will be a very meaningful sangha with all of you, for me personally.
If no one has question, Madhubas Prabhu, you want to? Okay, go ahead. Someone has. Go ahead, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, very nice class today. Beautiful explanation of the internal state and external state. I just wanted to know one thing, Mataji. What is the relationship between the internal state and the external state? Are they like two parallel lines, no connection, or is it interrelated?
I believe it's interconnected, because your internal will reflect outside, and your external will also reflect inside. For example, if externally we are not free from the 6 vikaras, kama, krodha, mada, moha, lobha, matsara, then our internal journey will be disturbed. And internally, if we are detached, and if we are very much in love of God, and we are actually feeling this ecstasy of bhava, externally that will reflect in our behavior, in our existence, in our relationship with people, in our external services to the Lord. So I think there's a very beautiful connection between the two, even though they are two separate processes, but they are very much interlinked. That's my humble understanding, but please, Vaishnavas, please add. or correct if there's any additional experiences that you have on this parallel journey.
I was thinking, Mataji, about this internal external state. Yeah, many times it's same, but there could be differences, just like Jad Bharat.
Mm.
Externally, he posed himself as a dumb person,
Mm.
but internally, he was in a very high consciousness, right? And that could be from that angle, right? Now, it's just like instruction from Grahastha that okay, externally, yeah, you have to carry out your duties as a Grahastha, but internally you have to be, fixed in Krishna consciousness,
Mhm.
right? So how, right?
Yes. Where, I mean, for practice, I feel you're right. Like there could be two different parallel journeys, and that's the skill that we have to develop as devotees. And yeah, as you said correctly, externally we may be having any profession like Jala Bharat, but internally our consciousness can be really some other place. And I'm sure we have experienced this. It's not just first time, and I would love to hear from you, from your experiences more on that, or maybe your Guru Maharaj's experiences, if they have shared any of that you remember.
Devakinandan Prabhu, something, and then we'll go to the question. I think Jagadisa has. Devakinandan Prabhu, please share.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, thank you so much for enlightening all of us. Wonderful conversation. Yeah, one or 2 points. One thing comes to my mind when I read Srila Bhakti Thakur bhajans. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is on a very high platform, Bhava or Prema platform. What I see in his bhajan, especially even just yesterday, I was trying to sing, I don't know how to sing Gopinath bhajan, he writes. And through the bhajan, he's lamenting.
Mm.
And we see that in Srila Narottam Das Thakur bhajans also. Srila Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, same mood. They're on a very ecstatic platform, externally, internally, both. But especially externally, we see that they both are lamenting that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says to Gopinath that you have abandoned me. I'm worse than the wretched souls. All my senses are so much absorbed in with material contaminations. Why you have abandoned me? You have all the control over all the living entities. So we see that platform, and I see that mood in Srila Prabhupada's teachings also, and I appreciate so much because His Divine Grace also on a very high platform and sitting in the courtyard of Radha Damodar temple for 6 years, trying to pen down his ecstatic purports on Srimad Bhagavatam, trying to write back to Godhead magazine. humbly begging around Radha Damodar temple for some prasad. But at evening time, some neighbors see that Srila Prabhupada is actually crying with tears flowing from his eyes in front of Srila Rupa Goswami Samadhi.
Yes.
And some Vaishnava, Gaudiya Vaishnava sees that Prabhupada is actually having conversation with Rupa Goswami. But he, even in all his conversations with his disciples, he hardly mentioned this particular incident, maybe once or so, in a very also humble way, that he was crying in front of Rupa Goswami Samadhi. Rupa Goswami, please guide me what to do. My Guru has given me order to preach in English language, but I don't know where to go, how to do it. And then we see in his poem, he wrote that all the Krishna puppet in your hands, you make me move. So that dainya bhav, that bhav of lamentation, that bhav of I am nothing, is very, very pleasing to the heart, that devotees, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Narottam Thakur, His Divine Grace, Bhakti Saraswati, they're so exalted on a very, very high platform. We can't even imagine that will ever happen to us in this lifetime. At least I personally can't imagine those bhava and prema platform. I mean, I wish I can at least develop nishtha in this lifetime. I remember one incident, Bhakti Saraswati Thakur tells his disciples that don't use this word too much, that somebody is a Knishtha Adhikari and Madhyama Adhikari, and don't think Knishtas are less. Actually, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj mentioned one time that even becoming Knishtha is so difficult. Having little Nishtha is so difficult. So if we offend that, hey, you are Kanishta, and look, I have developed, even in my mind, that I have developed some qualities of Madhyama or Uttama, but these other devotees are just still Kanishta, or they're not even Kanishta. It's very dangerous. So I was just meditating while you were sharing wonderful, especially Shiksashtam verses and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur bhajans. Thank you so much for taking up the service of speaking, especially not given enough time, but you presented so wonderfully Srila Narad Muni's ecstasy of having tears in his eyes, speaking to his disciple Srila Vyasadeva. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for reflecting on a very important point of really keeping it as a rahasya, secrecy. Like we have, even if somebody has those feelings of bhav or whatever, so they are very personal feelings, so we don't have to advertise them. I think that's a good reflection in there. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Mataji, the wonderful lecture.
Ashesh Karana Prabhu, 1 minute, hold on, please. Jagadisa Prabhu has a question before you. So let him ask, then we'll come to you. Jagadisa Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, from to all Vaishnava. My question, like you mentioned that bhakti process start from bhajan kriya and go to the bhava level. So, like how you follow the bhakti. So, at which stage, or if you want to see yourself, like you are making a progress and where you are belongs to. So how you see the feelings or how you go that stage, like sometimes you not to come speculations or so how to really check or see the your blocking now make a progress or block come one stage after the stage. So how to cross this and how to feel you really to this stage, or you have to do the work to move this stage.
My very humble understanding is that by constant analysis of our own self, and that's why we say bhakti is a very busy lifestyle, because we have so much to assimilate of what's going on and then analyze it with this yardsticks. And every day in our meditations or in our daily activities that we carry on, meditate like, what did I do wrong today, or where did it go wrong? Or if we have some good progress, then we realize that in our behavior, in our decision making, in our daily practical activities, and we can realize that, oh, this is probably 10 years back I would not have done this. And you recall where 10 years back, what were you doing with this kind of a situation? How did you react? And today, how you're able to react and how you're able to take it in a spiritual way. So this is all in my humble understanding, it's all personal analysis that is an ongoing process. If Prabhuji can add something to that would be wonderful.
You covered the details can be that's not at this, yeah.
Right.
Would say Ashish Karna Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Very wonderful lecture. Mataji, I am in very lower stage, but this is not related to direct bhakti. But I know that every devotee wants to know about the bhakti related things. But my question is, the first question is that Narad Muni and when the Krishna was here, Narad Muni is here in the material body, but Krishna is here in spiritual body, right? Is it correct? Is it correct or?
Yeah. So if we can refer to the last paragraph of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that. 1 second. So he says that it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence of the Lord, which he tangibly experienced by his developed spiritual senses without material tinge. And that's the progress of Narad Muni, that he was able to go into his Siddha Deha, or spiritual senses in the spiritual body, to realize or perceive the presence of the Lord, and come back into the sadhaka deha and tangibly describe it. So we don't have that. We don't have even a fraction of a second which we can go into our spiritual body experience and come back into our sadhaka deha and describe it. We don't have any of that.
Okay, so actually in previous yuga, Narad Muni can travel here. Right now also traveling, we cannot see. But previous yuga, Narad Muni can travel from the spiritual world to material world. When you come to the material world, so what type of body will be there? There is a spiritual body, or what is that actually?
No,
in particular condition.
In my understanding, the description that is happening here was his previous body in a previous day of Brahma. It was like a very different age, and he had that material body. He had that spiritual experience, and he went to his material body. He carried on his life, and at the end of his life, he died, or he left his body and got a permanent spiritual body. So Vyasadeva even asks him, how do you remember of your life which was in another day of Brahma? So you can imagine how much spiritual facility he had, faculty he had in order to do that. Does that answer your question?
No, my question is that, yes, I got the wonderful answer, Mataji, but question is that that body right now in particular planet, particular body can see, particular body can sustain. But in case of the Narada Muni can travel any planet, anywhere. He can appear as a human being, as a human, right? That like looks like us. Looks like us means he's a Dibba Purus. But the question is that the body is that when Narada Muni came to this world, traveled to the other world. So which type of body that is, and that is exactly the looking like that us and something like that. What is that?
Yeah, so that is a spiritual body, which is Satchit Ananda, which is full of eternity, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. And it is not a body of flesh and blood, the flesh and blood. It is it is a body that can sustain in any of these interplanetary travels.
Yeah. So, so everywhere I understood that point. But so when the Krishna is here in the Vrindavan, here the Gokula Vrindavan, that time Krishna's body is always spiritual, or
yes. Janma, Krishna mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita also. Divya Deha, which is not a ordinary Deha made up of blood and bones and marrow and anything of that type. So the Lord comes with his spiritual body and goes back with his spiritual body. He just appears in front of our eyes. And also some of his devotees like Narada Muni, when he travels from planet to planet, he travels in his spiritual body, which is not our body. And yeah.
Yes. God already mentioned the Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Ome Dibbam. Everything is Dibbam. But question is that when the Krishna is left this planet, that time he in Prabhupada already told one purport in Bhagavatam that he left his body here to the Virat Rupa and went back to the spiritual Goloka Vrindavan. So what is that?
No, if you see verse 4.7 and 8 in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatman sranam paritrana sadhanam vinashaya cha dushkritam sambhavami yuge yuge. So he's, I think, one before that, ajopisan navayatma bhutanam ishwaropisan prakrutim swamadhishtayas sambhavami punna punna. So he says, with my spiritual energy I appear. I come with my spiritual body and I go back with my spiritual. Why should he take shelter of the Maya based material body? There's no need for the Lord to do that.
Okay. So that is when Krishna left at that time, there is no bodies here. So automatically there is nothing here in the
no. Because he didn't come with anything. That's how he didn't come with a material body. So why should he leave any material body here? There's no need for the Lord. He is the master of the external energy. Yeah, he's the master. So he doesn't need any of that shelter.
Yes, I got your point. But in one purport, I need to refer that verse. Prabhupada mentioned there that Krishna left his body in Virat Rupa. And,
okay. So why don't you do this? Like, why don't we actually identify that purport, and then you can share it with us either in the WhatsApp or personally. You can connect with one of these senior Vaishnavas who can answer you better with that particular purport, and they can satisfy you in terms of that purport.
Okay.
Is that okay? Yeah, that's good. Thank you for raising that.
Thank you, Mataji. Wonderful answer and wonderful lecture. Dandavat Mataji.
Amrutana Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Dandavat. All grace to Prabhupada. Very nice class. Informative. Mataji, it is understandable that whenever Krishna or even his expansions, they come, it's always spiritual. And Krishna is Krishna, even as a little baby, when he was a couple of days old killing Putna, or 125 years old on Mahabharata, Kurukshetra. Krishna is Krishna, full potencies. That is understandable. Now he comes here as Gaur Leela, Mahaprabhu with his associates, and Nityanand Prabhu as Balramji. And we know that the body, as you said, Satchitanand, is not this flesh, pus, bones like ours. So still there is that Leela where Jagai Madai break the pot on Nityanand Prabhu's head and he bleeds. The description is given that blood comes. Now, is the correct understanding to say that, of course, their spiritual body doesn't have blood like ours. So it's just a kind of like a drama. Like, in drama also we have blood which comes out, something. Or is there something like spiritual blood?
No, I don't think there's like a spiritual blood. My understanding is that even when Krishna came in his spiritual body, everybody knew him as a material person. The people around him who did not realize him as God, they were aware that he is a person with body like me. In case of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, even just 500 years ago, who would believe that he has a spiritual body? So he's called a Channa avatar. He's what do you call the hidden avatar. And that's how the Leela is, that the Lord comes with a hidden spiritual body, and externally the Lord has to show his material body, the so-called material body, to the people, so that the people can believe him and carry on Leelas with him. So my very humble understanding is that it's just the appearance of the material body, which is seen by people who do not know that the Lord has a spiritual body. So it's a defect in the vision of a person who does not realize the Lord being in front of him, and who does not realize the Lord's spiritual body. So that defective vision is the material body that appears. But internally, as we know, there's no need for that shelter or that covering. So it's a matter of deficiency of the person who's seeing.
If I can follow up on this question of the body, the spiritual and material bodies, Mataji. Once upon a time, we were all associates of Krishna in the spiritual world. We wanted to enjoy separately, so we've come here. The soul has remained, but we acquired the body, 24 elements, and so on and so forth. And now we're going through circle of birth and death. The gross body is the one which is destroyed, but the soul is traveling on the mind, intelligence, and false ego, and going into the other body. Like that we're traveling. So that is also material, very subtle material elements.
Yes.
They're not getting destroyed till such time that there is liberation, and the soul returns back to its original position in the spiritual sky. Now, when the soul is going back to that spiritual sky, correct, we could have the 3 stages of liberation. So let's say, for example, with Krishna, the liberation, then whatever is this material mind, intelligence, ego, that gets dissolved, correct? It goes back into the material elements.
Yes.
Now, the question I have is, Mataji, suppose there are these jnanis and all who go into the Brahma Jyoti, the effulgence of Krishna. That is also spiritual. But they're still carrying their mind, intelligence, ego, because after millions of years, that desire again pops up and they fall into the material world. So what is the correct understanding? How should we understand?
Well, I never gave a thought on that particular aspect. But my understanding, I mean, if I really want to answer, yeah, they do give up their subtle body in order to merge into Brahman. They can't do that because it's incompatible in one sense. Subtle body being material energy, and they're merging into the Brahman as being a spiritual. But the only understanding that I can say is that they still are not sustainable in that Brahman. And that's how they need to come out of it and again acquire another subtle body. I mean, again, it's I never give a thought on this, so it's just coming out of my mind right now. But if there is any correction, any better reflection, from any of our Vaishnavas, please go ahead. But that's my understanding.
So much, Mataji. I'll just share a few things. Srila Prabhupada refers. Maybe let's read from the purport so that we are clear. This is from Canto 3, which I had shared in my previous class. Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter number 27, verse number 28-29, last paragraph. The words lingat vinigrame, which are used here, mean after being freed from the 2 kinds of material bodies, subtle and gross, The subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. And the gross body is made of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. When one is transferred to the spiritual world, he gives up both subtle and gross bodies of the material world. He enters the spiritual sky in his pure spiritual body and is stationed in one of the spiritual planets. Although impersonalists also reach that spiritual sky after giving up the subtle and gross material bodies, they are not placed in the spiritual planets as they desire. They are allowed to merge in the spiritual effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. The word Swa Samsthanam is also very significant. As a living entity prepares himself, so he attains his abode. The impersonal Brahman effulgence is offered to the impersonalists, but those who want to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental form as Narayana in Vaikunthas or with Krishna in Krishna Loka go to those abodes, where from they never return. I hope it is clear from our line Guru. Prabhupada.
Prabhuji, that makes sense. So where does that desire come? So is it to understand correctly that when a impersonal liberation, like Krishna says, once a person who comes to me will never go back. So we made a mistake, we suffered for it, we went back, and once bitten, twice shy. So we'll never come back to the material world. We learned our lesson. So is that only where you get the personal, the Bhagwan association, and the impersonal association, though they burnt their fingers, came and suffered, went up to the Brahmajot, the effulgence of Krishna, but still the spiritual mind had the desire to enjoy separately, and again they fall. Is that how we should understand this?
I would say unless they develop the full desire to be associated with the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, personal form of the Lord, they cannot enter, because the different people have different desires, right? That is if they have that particular desire, then only they will go to, as Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport. But not everybody is aiming to come to that highest level. Somebody is satisfied with this Brahman effulgence, all in all. That's what they think. Unless they are associated with a pure devotee, by the mercy of a pure devotee, whether it's Sukadeva Goswami or 4 Kumaras, they can be turned into personalists. But that has to happen. That means it requires some Agnata Sukruti, it requires the Sukruti from pure devotee. Otherwise, it just cannot happen.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, my understanding on that, on the Guruji, is that the impersonalist, they completely merge into the Brahmajyoti and dissolve. They completely dissolve into the Brahmajyoti. That means they will not.
Prabhu, sorry, your voice is cracking, or I don't know if it's my phone. Can you speak a
little?
No,
it's maybe actually mine. So the impersonalist, those who are practicing and they merge with the Brahmajyoti, the effulgence of the Lord, they completely dissolve into it. They will not come back. Dissolve in the potency of the Brahmajyoti of the Lord. Is it clear?
Well,
that's why even there was a Prathu Maharaj and many other cases, they were praying that. And I think it's in the Nectar of Devotion. It is mentioned that. So if we completely go into that, there is nothing else to do, nothing that we can do. So that please don't give us that liberation, but please give us a liberation that is that we can serve the Supreme. If you merge into the Brahmajyoti, you can't do anything. You just completely dissolve into the Brahmajyoti.
I think we can meditate on some of these aspects more and can bring more concrete questions and answer. Maybe we can have another time. I believe this particular session has to end. So
yes.
Prabhu, Krishna Namananda Prabhu, you already told that whoever meditates the form of the specific type of form of the God, he can reach to that form of the God. So Krishna, Narada Muni meditate with Narayana, so it go to the Narayana only, or he can go to the Krishna also.
In the interest of time, we'll discuss offline. Ashesha Karuna Jagannath Prabhu, thank you for your question. We'll discuss offline.
Sure.
Thank you very much, everybody. Vanchakalpato Bescha Kripa Sanam Papalakal Vaishnavibhyo Namo
Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
We can also
Govinda Mataji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Thank you, everybody.
Hare Bol.
Yeah, today's Parana time is already